Hey, yo, it's 3030. I want y'all to meet Deltron Zero, an automator. What am I talking about, family? Y'all come on in the house. Get your beverages, your coffee, your tea, spirit water. Hopefully, you don't need that this time of morning, but we have a lot to talk about. Welcome. I appreciate my ones and twos if you're back. Otherwise, all new family, welcome. You're with EarthtoneS. This is EarthtoneS, if I can say it properly. And I am your hostess, Calcala Moon. I'm so anxious to get into this conversation about Three Eye Atlas because I've been doing a lot of research on this thing and its entourage because it now has a slew of other comets that is in accompaniment with these comets because it was Three Eye Atlas, then there was R2 Swan, then there was A6 Lemon, and now there are like 10 others along with them. And we've never seen anything like this, family. Uh, so today is Saturday, October 11th, and this is a number 12 day. And I mentioned the numerology because we're going to be touching on that. And so this is very important. Now, today is a 12 day. When you break that down or add those two digits up, it comes out to a three. Three is creation. So today is a good day to be creative if you want to interpret it that way. All interpretations are overlapping and uh, flexible. But in doing this research, I it just kept adding up. So many things was happening, and they're still happening. There are a lot of volcanoes going off. There are a lot of earthquakes going off, and I want you to understand what we're looking at. And the reason why this discussion is very important is because, again, we've never seen anything like it. Now, this is Three Eye Atlas was considered the third interstellar object in our solar system. First, there was uh, Oumuamua, which you may remember was back in 2017. Then there was Borzov, and there was a third called Tikashan, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But that one, I believe, just went straight through the ecliptic. It did not travel through the interstellar solar system. But I'm going to show you a picture. And since the government has been shut down, it's been hard to get updates. However, the European Space Agency provided pictures once the government shut down and Three Eye Atlas went behind the sun. And this is important with astrology, and I'm going to tell you why. But I want to reference my intro and shout out to Dale the Funky Homo Sapien and the hieroglyphics. He's one of my favorite musicians, and he's on tour celebrating the 25th anniversary of his album Deltron 3030. And I highly recommend that you take a listen to it. It may not be, well, it's definitely not for everybody, but it's very relevant to these times that we're living in. And a lot of you will go and start listening to it, and your reaction will be something like, "Oh hell no, I'm not listening to this." But my son, when he listened to it for the first time 25 years ago, he was like, "No, man, that mess crazy." But I love it. I listen to it on a regular basis. Shout out to Dale. Now, moving on, um, Three Eye Atlas and this entourage is, I mean, pulling on our solar system. It is causing ripple effects in the fabric of space. And there were some shock waves, although we really weren't impacted like they anticipated. there were shock waves, and they were headed towards Earth. There were two solar or supernovas that went off, and these are not events that happen on a regular basis. Supernova is something that happens when a star is at the end of its life. And so to have a supernova go off in the neighborhood of the Milky Way is spectacular. So we have a lot of energy out there. So let me show you Three Eye Atlas and all of these comets that are taking place. And it's so much going on at one time. I'm at a loss for words in explaining it briefly in the least amount of terms because a lot of people are describing it as biblical. Hey, I'm not going to argue that because, uh, I mean, it's been thousands of years. It could be thousands of years between supernovas, and with the two of them happening in this same range of time, we're at in solar maximum. There were these shock waves, and it's impacting Earth with all of these earthquakes and volcanoes, and they're causing chain reactions. But there are some people who once thought that perhaps the sun had nothing to do with what was happening on the earth and that the sun's energy cannot penetrate the earth far enough in depth to cause earthquakes. Well, when we consider what is considered the fourth state of matter, then and that the earth is electric, we must reconsider. Look at all of these comets. There's Three Eye Atlas there. Here is Earth. There's the sun in the middle. Mercury is lining up. Venus not far away. Mars is here. And they're all lining up. There's Three Eye Atlas with the Earth. And around the 21st, it's going to line up with the sun and Sopdet, which we know it to be Sirius. And because of all of these synchronicities, it's hard to call it coincidental. I don't believe in coincidences, but I don't believe in any chance encounters either. Jan Van Zandt taught us that a long time ago, that everything happens for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And when you really think about it, I concur with that. But let's talk about math. The Adindra Codes is what we're talking about, family. These are light correcting or error correcting codes, as I've heard it described. And I'm going to show you some of them, and we're going to apply them to what we're going to learn about Three Eye Atlas. Now, this is my metaphorical analysis, and it's intended to spark your own interpretations. I'm not a scientist, but I am a Virgo, and therefore I have the gift of discernment. And Virgos are very thorough in research. And this is why it took me so much time to put this together. And so I want to move forward so that I can show you this presentation. But first, I'd like to mention a couple of books. One being Bringers of the Dawn. This is a very popular book in the esoteric community, and it talks about the Pleiades, whereas the Pleiades inform us of the new age, the new earth, and those that are here to lift the consciousness of the planet. There are a couple of other books that I want to mention, one being Cosmos and Psyche. I'm getting into that. All of us approach this knowledge in our own time. We all can't know it all. Every time I go down a rabbit hole, I realize how much I don't know, and that one person can't hold all of this energy, all of this knowledge. However, this is a staple in the astrology community, and we're going to touch on archetypes because in all cultures and all traditions, there are archetypes, and the archetypes tell the story of the soul's journey. And regardless of where you come from, you likely come from traditions that tell the story of the of creation and the story of man, or the creation story. Now, this book here is The Pale Fox. This is Alma. When I recited Professor James Small, who actually quoted the transcription performed by Brother Tony Browder and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing and Dr. Theophila Benga. That is not in this particular book. However, this book here is written by two Frenchmen. They transcribed it, or translated it into English, and they talk about their visits with the Dogon. So let me show you the Adindra Codes and how many there are actually ours. All right. Now, before I enlarge them, I just want to go through this little slide presentation. It's just like a couple of slides to show you how the Adindra codes were used by the Akan and Dogon people in their fabrics and communications. And this appears to be stoneware here, where they painted the codes in stoneware. I'm not sure how they were used, but we know that they are used in fabric because they still use them in fabric. These are some of the familiar ones. And there was actually an alphabet. I don't know how current it is and if they're still in use, but this alphabet was used to create encryptions and create codes that were deciphered in these symbols. And now I can kind of enlarge them, I believe, so that you can see some of the familiar ones, like the three concentric circles and the heart here and the different forms, the pinwheel, and there's another heart, and this is the one that's most familiar. Ngami is the one. There's another one with the egg on the back of the Sankofa bird, but here's Ngami, and the other Sankofa bird here. But let me get out of there and show you a couple of articles that will support the discussion of today. The universe remembers everything, or what if the universe remembers everything? New theory rewrites the rules of physics. And I'm not going to read this to you. I'm just going to skim through it so that you can see a couple of important facts when it comes to memory. Now, most of us are familiar with the Akashic Records and a lot of the mythology that we've learned. However, a lot of the mythology is based in principle. And the mythology of our folklore, our nursery rhymes, and fairy tales that we learn throughout life are all stories of the soul's journey. Now, here, what is pointing out is that the story begins with the black hole, an information paradox. According to relativity, everything that falls into a black hole is gone forever. But according to quantum theory, that is impossible because information cannot ever be destroyed. So as matter falls in the surrounding space-time cells, it records its imprint. And when the black hole eventually evaporates, the information is not lost. It has already been written into the space-time's memory. So this mechanism is captured mathematically. And that's what I want to point out, mathematically, because the universe speaks to us mathematically, geometrically. So what it is saying is that although this is applied to gravity, what is this saying here? But then we ask, what about the other forces of nature? It turns out they fit in the same picture. And I'm just trying to kind of skate through some of the important points. But it led them to a broader principle that is called geometry information duality. And that word duality pops out at me because this is what the human experience is all about. It is about the oneness experiencing duality through all of the expressions of every living thing. Okay, so let me get out of here. But before I do, let me finish reading this one sentence. In this view, the shape of space-time is influenced not just by mass and energy, as Einstein taught us, but also by how quantum information is distributed, especially through entanglement. And that's going to be the topic of discussion is quantum entanglement, where at least part of it. Okay, so the next article is related to crystals and how crystals hold time. Now, I wanted to start on this page because I want you to see the emerging science with relation to plasma. There are a lot of people in the scientific community, like geologists. A couple of people that I have an affinity for is Dr. Robert Schoch, who is an associate of Graham Hancock and the late John Anthony West, who I've learned a lot of information from. But here's the article here. Can time itself form a crystal? The new research says yes, in a surprising way. And to summarize it, it's basically confirming that crystals hold time. Nature follows many rhythms. As we know, the Earth's orbit around the sun brings about seasons, and the swing of the pendulum keeps a clock ticking. And that's what it's all about. The pendulum is another expression for the law of duality. So when a liquid freezes, its particles undergo a spatial transformation in the liquid state. They move randomly with no fixed structure. Once frozen, they lock into position within a crystal. And this is how matter is formed. So let me get out of here and go to the presentation that I'd like to share with you. It's moving so slow. I should have closed those windows so we can move a little faster, but I've already picked it. So here we go. Atlas, being the father of the Pleiades. And why is the Pleiades of importance? The Pleiades is in the constellation of Taurus. Taurus being the bull. Taurus is the first sign of embodiment, whereas Aries, being the first sign of the zodiac, is representative of the spark of creation. Taurus is the first earth sign. So opposing Taurus on that axis is Scorpio. This is where we have several planets transiting. But Atlas is the father of the 7 sisters of the Pleiades in the bull's eye of Taurus, in alignment with Orion, which is in alignment with Earth. And so we can replace or impose different pantheons with this story, such as the Orishas. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in numerology, 3 is creation, but the number 7 organizes. And we also have 7 Orishas that I'm going to touch on, but we want to emphasize Sankofa first and foremost, because as the sacred ancestral term for the Akan people of Ghana, West Africa, we are learning that we must go back and reclaim our past so that we can move forward. So we understand why and how we came to be who we are today. And Olodumare birthed the Orishas to guide humanity through the process of the soul's journey, the Shiro's journey, the hero's journey, such as the writer Joseph Campbell describes for us in his illustration. But Eshu or Allegra, Ogun, Yemaya, Obatala, Oshun, Shango, and Oya were the first Orishas, and their characteristics are interchangeable, they're fluid, but they are very similar to some of the other pantheons that we learn about in our early years, depending on what traditions we grew up with. I grew up in Christianity, and so the higher order, being the number 12, is representative of the disciples. It's representative of the 12 disciples, which is the actual zodiacal wheel. This is Ezekiel's wheel. 12 is also for the 12 systems of the body. And that's what we're going to learn about today, about systems and how plasma creates systems, such as the comets that brought water to the earth. All the water that's on the earth is recycled. And so therefore, these comets contain water, although it's only a 1-to-8 ratio between the carbon monoxide and water. It also contains ice crystals. But before we get there, let's mention the Chinese mother goddess Kuan Yin or Kuan Yin. She offers mercy, compassion, and unconditional love to all peoples of the world who are experiencing suffering, the sick and poor, women, and children. We could also interchange those names with the Anunnaki story of the Sumerians of Mesopotamia. And we could translate Osiris for Enki, Quetzalcoatl, Poseidon. Poseidon is the ruler of Neptune, and Neptune is with Saturn in the house of Pisces, stationed there, going back and forth over those last degrees that I emphasized in the last video. Inanna could be exchanged for Ishtar or Isis. Enlil for Marduk or Set in the ancient Kemet story. But what I didn't mention and wanted to was the number of Adindra Codes. There are 108 Adindra Codes. And this is important because The number 1 plus 0 plus 8 equals 9. 9 is the number of completion. 108 is the holiest number for the Hindus. Krishna theorized that we live 108 lives. This ratio is actually the sun's distance, the sun's diameter, or the moon's distance, or the moon's diameter from the earth. Thus, most of their prayer beads have 108. Now, I know the sun's distance from the earth to be like 98 million miles. And so therefore, that is considered to be one astronomical unit. And those numbers are very correspondent to the precession of the equinox. And if you were to look at them, you will see these numbers repeating: the 108, the 432, and they'll be in different denominations of thousands or what have you. But if you've been aching, or your joints have been bothering you, perhaps your respiratory issues, arrhythmias, tinnitus, different ailments of this nature, it is perhaps because of this energy being moved in the cosmos, this ripple effect that is having an impact on Earth energy. If your birth chart contains a lot of air, in other words, if you have a sun, moon, or rising sign in Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius, then when the air is stale, your mood or your mind becomes suffocated, your thoughts dull, and inspiration is reduced. And you need to flood your lungs and therefore do breath work. If you are a water sign, sun, moon, or rising in Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces, when water is stagnant, it generates pain in the joints, and you become very emotional and overwhelmed with emotion. And therefore, you need to make sure that you remain hydrated and hydrate your cells and your body, stretch. Sometimes if we become emotionally overwhelmed, especially men, they want to resist crying, but we don't realize that crying is cleansing. This is how we move the energy through the body. So we need to let the tears fall every now and again when it's appropriate. But also taking Epsom salt baths can help those that have a lot of water in their chart. Fire signs such as Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. Fire rages, and when it's unchecked, it burns in the form of anxiety, ulcers, gout, and anger. And so it needs to be extinguished with hydration and breath work. So also for a lot of fire in your chart, it's good to meditate and keep yourself centered, especially with perhaps that recommendation that I made in the last video, where you center yourself with the 3 questions: who am I, where am I, and what am I doing? Earth signs: Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. The earth signs are definitely recommended to ground themselves. I'm an earth sign, so I want to say it in the first person and the third person at the same time. But earth hardens, it calcifies. Your pineal gland can calcify. Joints can lock up, and your vision becomes cloudy, and brain fog can set in. So it's important to go outside and step in the grass barefoot every now and again, or walk in the sand and eat whole foods. But this will alleviate some of the energy that is overwhelming us in the earth at this particular time. So we need to move that energy through the body. Now, we were talking about plasma being the 4th state of matter. When we were in school, we learned that there were 3 states of matter: solid, liquid, and gas. Well, as it turns out, we knew about plasma because many of us had lava lamps. So, but now it turns out that plasma is just as important as gravity. A lot of our science is gravity-based, based on what we've learned about relativity. And but as it turns out, we live in an electric universe, and it's not really taking hold in the scientific community just yet. This science is emerging, and it is fascinating. There have been some people that have been out there doing it, such as Ben Kingsley. He's been out there, Suspicious Observers, and some others. But as it turns out, the Earth has scars to prove that there have been some electric events to create those scars. But plasma is interesting. It's a self-organizing principle, according to Nassim Haramein. And he was introduced by Pam Gregory. He's a physicist, and he explains how plasma is a self-organizing principle. There are also others, but the way that it is described is that gas can be heated to certain high temperatures. And when it reaches those high temperatures, it causes the electrons to separate from the protons, and they become very chaotic, collide with one another, and become ionized. And this ionization is what is happening with these comets. That's what happened with 3I Atlas when we were first introduced to it in July. The tail of 3I Atlas was in the opposite direction than what we expected it. And this is because it had that negative ionization as it was facing the sun. But now that tail is different, it has grown in nature as well as the others. And this is of concern, being that we don't really have an eye on it with the quality camera equipment and telescopes that that NASA can provide. It could shake some things up. Like, these comets obviously came out of the Oort cloud, which is at the periphery of the solar system, or from the Kuiper belt, which is between Mars and Jupiter. And the trajectory, if I can say it, of these different comets came through the astrological signs of Virgo, Scorpio, and it's going to leave through Cancer, where we have Jupiter. And this is important because next week we're going to experience what is called a grand water trine in astrology, where there are going to be exactly 120 degrees between three planets, Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars, all in the water signs, separated by exactly 120 degrees. And this is important because when you consider the significations of Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars, it's telling a story. And so, in the interest of time, I'm going to have to do a separate video on that and move forward with this plasma. Now, as it is a self-organizing field, these atoms become chaotic, and although solid, liquid, and gas can manifest separately, they are just simply plasma in a cool state. But when they are interacting together in the form of plasma, they can move and flow through each state, solid, liquid, and gas, creating systems. And that's the important thing to remember, is that it creates systems. So when the theorists out there claim that these comets are extraterrestrial and are live in nature, there's some truth to that, because it has potentiality. And as the universe speaks to us in math, I wanted to mention the story that Baba Kamene explains about the first mathematician who was a woman. And I need to get these names right. So I'm going to stop my share for a minute so that I can tell this quick story. But he smiles when he tells this story as though he is proud to tell it, whereas he's saying that the first woman to notice the mathematical language of the universe was the mother of necessity, because the woman had to map her menstrual cycle. And so therefore she became familiar with the phases of the moon. She passed that information on to her daughter. And this is how we began to map the heavens. And so to bring that to the present, we have women to thank for our journeys to the moon, because it was because of these female mathematicians that we were able to come up with the calculations necessary for the first Apollo mission. So my question to myself was, did they have some type of genetic memory? Okay. But Shirley Ann Jackson, who was a telecommunications theoretical physicist, laid the groundwork for call waiting, caller ID, and fiber optics. I never heard of Annie Easley, whose work synergistically coded NASA's rocket systems, and Dr. Marion Croak, who we can thank for Zoom, Microsoft Teams, FaceTime, and WhatsApp. This engineer made our voices come through more smoothly in our communications through these mediums. But Ms. Croak owns or holds 200 patents, and she's listed in the National Inventors Hall of Fame. Never heard of her. Okay, but this information comes from Phenom Teacher on Substack. You should check her out. But through networking and data communication streams, they were innovative in ways that allow us to funnel large amounts of information through fiber optics. But Gladys West is another one who created the framework for GPS, our global positioning systems. Most of us know by now about the four Black hidden figures: Miss Katherine Johnson, Mary Jackson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Christine Darden from Hidden Figures movie, who laid those computations to take us to the moon on the Apollo mission. But I wonder if you've ever heard of Miriam Daniel Mann. I just learned about her. She fought to have the colored computer signs removed from their desks back when they were working for NASA. And I find this ironic. And I wonder if you can imagine how these meetings went, having these women convince the men that they work for to listen to their ideas. They were called operators, and when in fact they were performing code. So these were women performing code, and we pay a lot of money to coders today to perform this responsibility. But to make things fair to the masculine energy out there, there was nuclear engineer Henry Sampson. He was another nuclear expert that helped us move along in our technological advancements. But Jesse Eugene Russell from Nashville, he was instrumental in introducing the cell phone. And these are just some unsung technical experts that help us move along and advance in our technology. But going back to the presentation, math is what we're talking about, sacred geometry. is how the universe is set up. And ergodicity is something that you should look up. I won't take the time to do it at this particular time, but these methodologies all correspond with the letters in the word mathematics. The perfect fit is not just a musical interval, it is nature's favorite ratio. From atoms to orbits, the spiral of becoming steps through fits, layering fields into form. In sympathetic vibrational or vibratory physics, matter unfolds like music. And this was music to my ears. Each element, a chord struck in the scalar octave. The universe is not made of particles, it is made of ratios of resonance. And I have to stop here because our elder Cornel West raves about John Coltrane. As a musician, I love all types of music, even bebop being one of my faves, even before my time. But I asked myself, why does he rave about John Coltrane so much? And I learned that John Coltrane was the composer of many of our classical original favorites. And so he is worth a listen, specifically the song Giant Steps. Giant Steps should be in the repertoire of every musician, regardless of what your association is to music. But my favorite song, one of my favorite songs of all time, is Bebop Medley by Chaka Khan, which includes Giant Steps. And so this is where I learned John Coltrane was the composer. And what he did was discover the octaves of music and the perfect fit in 12 notes. And there's that higher octave of 12, creating a system. Quantum physics, also known as quantum mechanics, quantum theory, wave mechanical model, or the matrix mechanics, including quantum field theory, is a fundamental theory in physics which describes nature at the smallest scales of energy levels of atoms and subatomic particles. And so this is where the magic happens. And this is the emerging science. We all knew about or thought the atom was the smallest particle. And what we are learning is about the neutrinos and the short-lived subatomic particles, such as neutrinos, leptons, taus, and other terms of that nature. But this subatomic world is introducing us to the abilities of the quantum field. And the synastry and synchronicity not only express themselves in their own parts, but when they're interacting as systems, they can create systems that are physical, chemical, robotic, biological, and cognitive. So this is how the computer was invented, based on the binary code that was used in ancient times, such as the Adindra Codes, as well as these quantum physics and how the brain operates. But the quantum entanglement is a phenomenon in quantum mechanics where the properties of two or more particles become correlated in such a way that the state of one particle cannot be described independently of the state of the others, even when the particles are separated by large distances. And this is the part that I want you to get, because this is actually verifying and proving astrology. This means that the state of one particle is directly related to the state of another, regardless of the distance between them. Quantum physics says that as you go deeper and deeper into the workings of the atom, you see that there is nothing there, just energy waves. And these are the scalar waves that we are talking about. It says an atom is actually an invisible force field, a kind of miniature tornado which emits waves of electrical energy. And when we're talking about the angles of the birth chart, this is where the tornadic energy happens. These are the vortices that create the events in our lives based on the configurations of the planets at any given particular time, such as when we were born. So quark matter is an extremely dense phase of matter made up of subatomic particles called quarks. Let me get a sip of coffee here. This theoretical phase would occur at extremely high temperatures, as I mentioned earlier, and densities. It may exist at the heart of neutron stars. So as the neutron stars are out there in deep space, they're emitting such large amounts of energy, it creates that warp. And I don't know if any of you heard about this strange signal that we were experiencing in the science community in deep space. It turned out to be it was a neutron star or a pulsar of some sort. But it also can be created for brief moments in particle colliders on Earth, such as CERN's Large Hadron Collider. So these subatomic particles are created and they last for like a few seconds. And because they last for such short periods of time, this is why we weren't aware of them beforehand. So they travel the photonic belt, and some of them are even able to penetrate the body. And so this is how the energies from the sun and the planets impact us here on Earth. Now, we think of time as being linear, past, present, and future, cause, effect, cause, effect. But what time actually is that chaotic sea of possibility and potentiality that I've been describing, where the atoms are in a sea of chaotic energy. We're out of chaos is the calm, and comes the order. But you have random effects from all of these different causes, and this is where the conscious will is allowed its liberty to exercise free will and conscious will and making your own decisions. But the photons, the light particles, or light waves don't experience time. In the theory of relativity, Albert Einstein established that the closer you get to the speed of light, the less time you experience and the shorter your distance becomes. But for photons themselves, which move at the speed of light, time stops and space shrinks to nothing. This means that for photons of light, even those emitted trillions of years ago, there is zero change in time and distance from when they were emitted to, to when they are absorbed again. So that's including our time here on Earth. And when we leave what belongs to the Earth, this is where we get the expression ashes to ashes, dust to dust. But are we talking dust of the earth or stardust? It's worth a thought. But I gave you an example in a previous video that I learned about hydrogen, and I didn't finish the explanation, whereas hydrogen is a form of light. Hydrogen is information. So as light travels the photonic belt, it is bringing information to the planet. But because the body is made up of mostly water, around 70 to 75%, 75 to 78%, I should say. This is information in a bound state. Although water is fluid, it is constrained in the body. And so my question was, if we are made up of nitrogen, carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen, I wondered if oxygen was a binder, and I looked it up, and sure enough, it was. So I'd like you to recognize the patterns in this picture here. What I concluded was a bunch of loops. That's the pattern. If I like a song, I can set it on loop-de-loop, and I can have it on repeat over and over and over again. And that's what we're doing here in our many incarnations. We are coming to master the different lessons and energy that we'd like to balance according to our soul's contracts and what we chose to and when we chose to come. But that is the wheel of samsara as described in the Hindu tradition. We go through the cycle of generation, operation, and destruction. Generation, operation, and destruction. God. Death and rebirth. Until we balance our energy when we don't have to come back to the planet anymore and we can get off of the wheel of samsara. What is a bindu? That is the seed of light, the portal to infinity. It is the point, the drop, or seed. In Hindu philosophy and yogic tradition, it symbolizes the source of creation or the point of creation where form emerges from the formless. And this is one of the lessons that we are learning with Neptune and Saturn in Pisces, in the last sign of the Zodiac. We are learning unity through the lens of Neptune. We are learning how to dissolve the old world and build something new. And so this is why I believe that we are having these retrogrades of the outer planets at the same degree so that we can pay attention to this configuration and follow its meaning. But the Bindu is not just a concept. It is pure potential, the spark of the divine consciousness within all things, universal intelligence. At the tomb of Osiris is an imprint of the flower of life that's been there for over 4,000 years. And what it's pointing out is the basis of life. It's pointing out the spark of the divine and how we come out of the spark of the divine through this geometric beautiful spark of energy that eventually creates something beautiful. And so each of these symbols at the point or the 6 points of Metatron's cube here is indicative of that divine spark. The 7th circle, because there are actually 7 circles in the seed of life, is in the middle. And that 1111, which a lot of us may be seeing in repetition at this time, is an indication, a synchronistic sign that we are awakening to enlightenment and we are awakening to ourselves and the next phase, the next chapter of our journey. And so this Metatron's cube is being manifested from the flower of life. And consequently, we see everything in Metatron's cube. We see the seed of life in the very center there. We see the ovum As a result, we have mitosis. We see that there. We see the tree of life there. Everything is there. And this is the manifestation of matter. Form from formless. This is the slowing down of vibration. This is the falling angel. And we say that it is hexed because the structure is in the form of a hexagon. Most crystals are formed in the shape of the hexagon. And the star tetrahedron, or star tetrahedron, contains all 5 platonic solids. And so this structure at the north pole of Saturn is indicative of structure. Saturn structures the alchemical process of time itself. And this is why we identify it as Father Time. So the story of the Titans, all the mythologies were about the planets, the administrators, the story of the creation of the planets and it orbiting the sun. Saturn is the father of Jupiter. It's the last visible planet of the solar system. And it's called the rainbow planet because it creates a bridge to the outer world, the world of the outer planets that has the destiny of us as a collective. Your DNA is more than just a string of chemicals. It is complex, vibrating energy, a matrix which creates a kind of music that can be heard in the spiritual realm. This music forms a morphogenic field. Your birth chart is the sheet music to your song. And this is what makes us more unique and different from any other person walking the planet. But our DNA is changing. We're receiving upgrades, light codes. And that's what I think is happening with these comets in our solar system. Is bringing us light codes. The Earth is changing, and it's up to us to balance the energy within our individual selves as we transform from Homo Sapien to Homoluminous. We're crystallizing. And so many of us that were raised in the Christian tradition, I'm tired, y'all, but many of us that were raised in the tradition of Christianity read the scripture that teaches us that if we live a good life, we'll move on to live and sit at the right hand of God. And this is 144,000. So really, it's talking about the upgrade in our chromosome. It is the upgrade of the 24th chromosome, and we're going from the old Earth to the new Earth, from the 666, 6 electrons, 6 neutrons, 6 protons in the carbon DNA strand to a crystal-based DNA strand, from the 2-strand double helix to the 12-strand DNA, from the mortar body to the light body. And our gene expression will then reflect the 144,000, which is the 144 lotus petals multiplied by the 1,000 lotus petal of the third eye. The separation and division that we see between the masculine and feminine energy is for a reason. And this separation is coming to a peak so that we can eventually learn the lessons and heal the wounds so that we can create masculine and feminine union and go from death to eternal life. And we're going to do this through recognizing the impact of epigenetics. And epigenetics can be studied If you were to look up Dr. Joy DeGruy, who wrote the book Post-Traumatic Slavery Syndrome, as well as Dr. Bruce Lipton, who approaches it from a more biological standpoint. But epigenetics is the imprint that is on or has been coded in our DNA based on our environmental stressors, our environmental factors. The epigenome can be influenced by positive experiences as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be a negative experience, but our negative experiences have a stronger impact because these are the lessons and the energy that we need to balance. Because if everything is energy, frequency, and vibration, then we are being impacted by the environment in which we live. And so the traumas that we've experienced can be balanced by the spiritual exercises that we perform based on our own individual journeys. But these are some similarities that we have to the universe that is indicative of the Hermetic principles, as above, so below, being only one of them, the law of the pendulum being the law of duality, and the first one being, of course, the law of mentalism. The brain neurons are very similar and are a microcosm of the universal structure of these interlocking and quantum entanglement of the filaments, the gaseous filaments. And as they heat up, they create these chemical reactions that make things happen. In the human eye, we have rods and cones. And we also have rods and cones in the pineal gland. And this is why we call it the third eye, when in fact it's really the first eye. The helix can be compared to the Helix Nebula. There are a lot of nebulas out there that reflect and appear to look like biological structures. We have the Crab Nebula, we have the Eagle Nebula, we have a lot of nebulas such as the Double Helix Nebula as well. And you also see the torus up in your upper right-hand corner of the toroidal field, the electromagnetic field of the heart, as well as Earth's magnetic field. And this is weakening because of the strain somewhere in the South, in the Caribbean. There's an anomaly where the ozone appears to be weak. But yeah, we are feeling this strong magnetic pulses. And well, I don't want to call it that because there is such thing as an EMP. And we don't want that. But on the bottom, we have a mathematical or astronomical as well as a biological comparison as well of the one forming into two and creating the Vesica Pisces in the math corner. This is our sacred geometry, and that's what the G is in your what is it? Your I'll think of your secret society, the Freemasons. That's what I was trying to think of. My goodness. But these gaseous filaments are very close to the neurons and synapses in our brains. And this is a close-up. But the heart receives 60 times more electricity or produces 60 times more electricity than the brain. And one of my favorite quotes come from Dave Brubeck, who is a musician, of course, who says that the first sound we hear is our mother's heartbeat, and the last sound we hear is our own. And I find that to be profound because sound and vibration is the word. In the beginning was the word, and the vibration of the universe is the word. And so here's a picture of the heart and its vortices. And so in these vortices, the electrical impulses from our life force is distributed throughout the body, so much so that we create a toroidal field, which we call our personal space. And so we must protect that personal space because it is our energy field. And I do have a short entry on TikTok. If you're on TikTok, go to Kakalamoon at Kakalamoon, and you'll see where I wrote a little excerpt on the vortices of the heart that was quite impressive to some cardiologists. He was one of the only people that that responded to it. But here's another example of our relationship to the cosmos. As above, so below. As these energies hit the planet, so does creation, where only one spermatozoa is able to fertilize the egg. But in your upper right-hand corner, you have an example of how hurricanes, the solar system, the water in your toilet, the water in your drain spins counterclockwise. And at the bottom is an example of how the life force moves through the body like lightning. But Walter Russell does a good job in explaining the universal one and how the creating of the universe appears as the one and disappears back into the one. All ideas are repetitive and no effort of motion once started ever ends. The end of an octave is but the beginning of another octave. The end of a cycle is but the beginning of another cycle. The end of a wave is but the beginning of another wave. Also, the end of life is but the beginning of another life. There is no death. Man cannot die. So deep within you, there is a knowing that you're here for a great purpose. Allow your intuition to guide you to that knowing as you take new steps to uncover it. It's there, but it's in the stillness, in the peace, in the quiet. And you have to say to yourself, peace, be still. And give yourself that gift to find it. But the Akashic Records is recognized in world cultures, faiths, philosophers, and generally they all agree that the Akashic Records exist. The Hindus believe in a universal substance called the Akasha, from which the natural elements of water, fire, earth, and air were created. The Akashic Records are perceived to be the collective memories and histories of every thought, physical and emotional vibration, sound, major event, minor incident, and all movement in eternity. The Akashic Records are the entire history of everything that ever has been and everything that ever will be. They could be looked upon as a memory bank containing details about everything that has happened in the universe and information about every spirit and the many lives that have lived. We are the barcode. We are the matrix. And the ascension of Saurus, of Asar, the ascension of Asar. I was trying to say Asar and Osiris at the same time, but this is our ascension. Out of the darkness shall ye rise upward, one with the light and one with the stars. And this is from the Emerald Tablet of Thought. But the messenger can only deliver the message to those who are in a vibrational match to the message. So don't stress yourself out saying things to people who can't hear you. I don't debate and argue with people who are not on the same vibratory frequency. Not that that makes me better, because we are all no better than the next person. And we all are traveling our own paths. And We are where we are supposed to be when we are supposed to be there. And eventually, we all reach the same destination. So a moment of quiet every day will expand your ability to access the vibratory frequency of energetic possibility. I can't do the work for you. No one else can do the work for you. You have to do the work so that you can hear your calling. But this is a chance for a new beginning, not only as individuals, whether you're in a relationship or not. This is about the change or being the change that you wish to see that starts within. Asar, Shango, Prometheus, choose your pantheon of whoever represents that divine spark within you and create the new chapter for the your soul's journey. But this is a galactic timeline here as we are experiencing it through 2025 and 2026. And we're going through revelation season. Not that these steps and these phases aren't going to overlap, they're overlapping. So we can experience one phase and go back to that phase at another time, like the Lion's Gate, the Lion Star Gate. We experienced it between July 26th and August 8th, and we're going to experience it again in 2026. But this is like a tree of life type of timeline. And it goes through to the new dawn, the end of next year. But I appreciate you hanging in there with me if you're still here. Family, I'm going to pull an oracle card for us and bring this presentation to a close. Okay, I don't know. I believe yeah, that went off. I don't even believe I started it, so there's no telling. I'm shuffling the cards, asking spirit to give us a message from one of the African goddesses as we raise the vibration of the divine feminine and all of us, including our brothers. And that's quite a few. Damn, light and everything. That's too many. They wanted to come out. Allah. Grief. Let's see what that means. Grief. It didn't pop out, but it seemed like the one to come out. A lot of us may be experiencing that. Allah is from Nigeria, from the Temple of Lovers. She's the ancient earth mother. Allah is the foremost Igbo Ilusi deity. Goddess Allah oversees motherhood, fertility, and the afterlife. Her death, or after death, humans return to the womb of Allah, replanted, and the soul to reincarnate. Give spirit your grief. bawl it out, wail it out, cry it out, sob, shriek, shed tears, surrender it. You are holding unprocessed grief. You want to skip over it and get back to normal. But grief doesn't go away because you ignore it. The only way to healing is to walk through it. Losing a loved one is the ultimate heartbreak, but you also experience grief after breakups, job loss, and disappointments. Self-love and self-care are required. Ask for support. Be gentle with yourself. And the declaration is, I am supported by my loved ones, those who are seen and those who are unseen. I don't know who needed to hear that, but I'm sure there are quite a few people who do. Family, I'm going to do another video on the astrology, but I appreciate you hanging in there with me through this presentation. Don't forget to click, like, share the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Y'all take it light. All right.